Morning all. Brian S. Pratt here. I'm going to read chapter 21 of The Shepherd's Quest of the Broken Key Trilogy. Yesterday was a good day for me. For YouTube, that is. Not only did I hit 100 subscribers, 100 videos. Yeah, chapter 20 was my 100th. But I had a really good day with subscribers. I got 2. So I'm now up to 143. So all I need is another 429 to go. If I got another 429, 429, something like that. So if I can do that for another 429 days, I'll have my 1,000 subscribers. So I'm on my way. Anyway, let's do chapter 21. So they're in the ruins of Algoth. They had the spectral battle. They found the stairs leading down, and now morning comes. They're gonna wake up, and they're gonna head down and see what there is down below. Starting to get fun, actually. All right. Kevik was the first to awaken. He saw Chad over by the fire, sitting and watching the flames. When he sat up, Chad glanced over in his direction. He grinned and waved for him to join him. Getting to his feet, Kevik walked over and sat next to Chad. He held forth his hands to the fire and warmed them. "You guys don't trust me much, do you?" "It's not that," Chad replied. "We simply haven't known you all that long, is all. You seem nice enough. But only with time will you come to trust me," he concluded. "Isn't that the way with anyone?" asked Chad. "I suppose it is," Kevik agreed. He knew he was a trustworthy person, but he couldn't understand why his new companions wouldn't immediately recognize that. He sort of felt the same way about Bart. Something about him put him off, even though he hadn't done anything to warrant it. "You three came all this way through Goblin territory for a key?" "That's right." "I hope the risk was worth it," Kevik said. "Oh, it will be," Chad assured him. Then he glanced over to where Bart had just sat up. Next to him, Ryan was beginning to stir as well. "Good morning," he said to the newly awakened. "You too," Bart said. Standing and stretching, he came over to the fire. After a minute, Ryan joined them. "I've been thinking that we need to take everything with us when we go down below. I have the stairs, but I think below would just work a little bit better." "I've been thinking that we should take everything with us when we go down below," Chad said. "It wouldn't do to be stuck somewhere like Bart and I were in that small room yesterday without our equipment." "I agree," Bart said. "What about the horses?" Ryan asked. "They can't stay in here. They need grass." "I would hate to leave them outside where anyone or anything could make off with them," Bart said. "In that case, we need to take them out for water and a quick graze before we lock them in here while we're down below," Ryan said. It pained him to have to say that, for he knew it meant prolonging the time before they would be able to explore the secret passage they found the night before. But having been around animals as much as he had, he knew how they would suffer if neglected for food and water. The others agreed. So they took the horses outside and found where a fallen wall had created an area that held water. From the looks of the pool, which was only about 7 feet wide, the wall must have fallen years, maybe even decades ago, if not longer. Its banks had already formed around the broken masonry as over time, dirt was blown into the water by the wind and subsequently deposited on the edges by the water. After allowing the horses time to drink, they let them graze for an hour before returning to the hall. While they were out, the ruins gave Ryan a discomforting feeling, especially after the ghosts of the night before. He could tell the others were affected just as he was, and none of them were able to relax until they returned to the hall. Once back within the hall, they made sure to close the front doors. Bart even took 2 pieces of broken masonry from the remains of the neighboring buildings and placed them before the doors so they wouldn't open while they were gone. As soon as the doors were blocked and they were ready to go, each slung their packs over their shoulder. Along with his pack, Kevik took Wisecloth, the staff his master had given him. Ryan lit his lantern, then followed Bart into the hallway and down to the kitchen and the secret stairs. When they entered the kitchen, the light from the lantern illuminated the oven, where it still sat after they had pushed it aside to reveal the hidden steps. "Ready?" Bart asked. When the others nodded, he stepped onto the top step and began his descent into the darkness below. The height of the stairwell wasn't all that high, and forced them to bend slightly over in order to avoid scraping the tops of their heads on the ceiling. After descending 15 steps, they reached the bottom. A short passage extended forward from the bottom step for about 10 feet before reaching a junction. Another passage crossed over theirs that ran from left to right, while the passage they were in continued on past the junction. The walls of the passage were lined with bricks, though the floor was dirt. Sconces were set in the walls every so often where torches could be placed to provide light. "Which way?" asked Bart as he came to a stop at the junction. None of the directions showed anything more than a continuation of the passage past the point where the light from the lantern reached. "The right, maybe?" suggested Ryan. "Good as any," replied Bart. Turning right, he and the others left the junction behind. They didn't go far before another passage branched off to the right. It was slightly smaller than the one they were in. "Let's check it out," Chad said. With Bart still in the lead, the group moved into the branching passage. They followed it for a few feet before the lantern's light revealed a sharp turn to the right. Moving forward, they turned the corner and came to an abrupt halt. The passage ended a short distance ahead, where a chest sat against the end of the passage. "Well, that's suspicious," Bart announced. "What do you mean?" asked Chad. "Why in the world would anyone put a chest in such an accessible spot?" he asked. Kevin glanced at the chest and said, "We are in a hidden area." "True," admitted Bart, "but this just doesn't feel right." "Are you going to open it?" Ryan asked. Bart sighed. "We have to. It could hold what we're coming here searching for, though I find that unlikely in the extreme." He glanced to the others. "You should stay back." While the rest remained where the passage turned, he moved forward. How about curved? The rest remained where the passage curved, while the rest remained where the passage curved. It's funny how your mind is filled in words. While the rest remained where the passage curved, he moved forward. His senses were telling him that this wasn't right, but what else could he do? He took a single, careful step at a time toward the chest. His father had told him of situations like this, where chests were placed in catacombs and other places as a lure to the unwary. Almost his entire concentration was directed to the floor before the chest and where he placed each foot. He worked his way gradually closer until he felt an ever so slight shift beneath his foot. He froze. It was a pressure plate of some kind. Of that he was certain. He had a few guesses about what it would do when he removed his foot, but there was nothing he could do about it now. He brought his other foot, which still hovered in the air a couple inches off the ground, back down next to the other. Then he slowly crouched down into a squatting position. Beginning to slowly rock back and forth on the balls of his feet, he braced himself. When he finally rocked backward to the right angle, he launched himself backward with all his strength. As soon as his feet left the floor, a section of the floor stretching from one side of the passage to the other and extending from 2 feet behind the point where his feet had been to just before the chest, dropped away. Dropped away beneath him. "Catch him!" Ryan shouted as he raced forward and grabbed Bart by the arm as he came to land. His leap had cleared the trap opening by a solid foot, and he quickly steadied himself. "Thanks," he said to Ryan. "What happened?" Kevik asked. "Sprung a trap," Bart replied. He turned around and faced the others and said, "This place could prove quite deadly." "Yeah," agreed Ryan as he stared at the pit. "I can see that." Just getting punctuation. Who's got the rope? Bart asked. I do, replied Chad. He opened up his pack and pulled out the coil of rope. What do you need it for? As Bart took the rope, he said, to see if there are any more traps over there. He nodded over the 2 areas of the floor on the far side of the pit, situated on either side of the chest. Because now we got a big hole, a big opening, right, in the floor. And then on the other side, against the wall, is the chest. And then we got a spot on either side of the chest. I'm pretty sure that was clear. But sometimes when you write stuff, you're just not sure how well the reader will visualize things. And I try really hard to get it to where you guys can visualize things. But sometimes some people just don't follow or can't understand what I'm trying to tell them. All right. The pit, as it turned out, was 15 feet deep. When Riyan took the lantern to look into it, found that the sides were sheer all the way to the bottom, which looked to be covered in long, shiny spikes. The floor that had fallen in was actually hinged to the floor on their side. The gleam of bones among the spikes said this trap had caught the unwary before. Bart tied the rope to his pack and moved to the edge of the pit. He swung the pack like a pendulum until he had enough momentum, then released the rope so the pack would sail over the pit and hit the floor on the right side of the chest. The other end of the rope was firmly held in his hand so he could retrieve the pack after it landed. When the pack hit the floor next to the chest and nothing happened, he hauled in the rope. Then he did it again, this time having his... No, I got that backwards. Left side of the chest, okay. Right. And then the right side of the chest. I go into an explanation in a minute, and this was backwards. Okay, so the first time he threw the pack, hit the right side or the left side of the chest. I changed it from right to left. So now the first time he hit the left side, nothing happened. Then he did it again. This time having his pack land on the right side of the chest. As soon as the pack hit the right side, the floor tilted toward the pit at a 45-degree angle. That's why you never assume it's safe, Bart said as he pulled his pack back in. First you encounter the pit. If you survive that, and you're foolish to believe the pit was the only trap, you jump across. The thief would then have a 50-50 chance of landing on the solid side. Right-handed people would tend to jump to the right side of the chest. Thus, why that side was trapped, I would think. If he landed on the right side, he would lose his balance when the floor tilted and plummet down. When the floor tilted, and then would plummet to the spikes below. Now, okay, this is a total tangent and rambling, I guess, as my girlfriend would say. But anyway, in America, since we drive on the right side, we are so used to being on the right side that when you're walking, you unconsciously move to the right. And I'm assuming in England, if you approach something, you unconsciously move to the left because you're just because all your life, when you've been driving or being driven, always to the right, England to the left. And so I'm not so sure about the right-handed thing. It just feels right, and it sounds like something his father would say. But I don't know. Nasty, said Chad. I'm sure that was the intention, he said. Bart didn't untie his pack from the rope when he opened it to get his lockpicks. Might need it again, he told him. You're not planning on opening the chest, are you? Asked Kevin. Yes, I am, he said. He then took the other end of the rope and secured it around his middle. Then he handed the rest of it to Riyan. Make sure that if I fall, you stop me before I hit the bottom. I thought it was safe, said Riyan, indicating the floor on the right side. The trigger might have rested over the years, she explained, or it could be set to only go off when the weight of a man is on it, in case the thief did what I just did with my pack. Oh, Riyan said, then I get you. Hold on tight, but give me enough slack to reach the other side. When he was sure he had enough slack, and Riyan gave him the go-ahead, he turned back to the pit. Then, with a running start, he leapt and cleared the pit opening and landed on the remaining small section of the floor next to the chest. Once there, he waited a moment to be sure nothing untoward happened. "All right," he said to the others. "I think it's safe. Still, don't let go of the rope." "We won't," Riyan assured him. Chad was there with him, holding the rope. He gave the lock a once-over before taking out 2 of his picks. Pretty sure that there wasn't a trap in the chest itself, he still moved slowly and carefully when he inserted the picks into the lock. After a moment, he felt the tumbler move and the lock clicked open. Before he opened the lid, he replaced the picks back in the rolled leather. Then he gripped the lid and very carefully opened it. Inside, he could see this. Inside, Inside. Actually, how about this? From inside came the glimmer of gold coins. Ooh, I like that one. I like that better. From inside came the glimmer of gold coins. There were a dozen of them lying in the bottom of the chest. They were exactly the same as the others they had found in the chest yesterday. Got more of the gold coins, he announced. Then he collected them and put them in the pouch hanging from his hip. Once he had them all, he closed the lid and jumped back over the pit. "How many?" asked Riyan. "A dozen," he replied. He pulled them from his pouch and gave them each 3, including Kevik. Kevik held up one of the coins from his share and took a really close look at it. When he was done, he saw that the others were staring at him. "What?" he asked. We would appreciate it if you wouldn't tell anyone where we found these," Bart said. He met Bart's gaze for a moment, then asked, "Why?" "It might arouse certain questions that you will be unable to answer," Riyan said. "Then maybe you should explain things to me," he suggested. Riyan and Bart glanced at one another for a moment, then Bart nodded. Riyan turned back to Kevik and asked, "Have you ever heard of the King's Horde?" "Sounds familiar," he replied. "What is it?" "It's a treasure people have been trying to find for centuries," explained Riyan. He then held up one of his coins with the symbol side toward Kevik. "This is the king's insignia, or so we believe." "Not just us, but many others do too," added Bart. "If word got around that you had a coin bearing it," I'm going to add in, especially one of the gold coins, "you would be inundated by people wanting to know where you found it." Kevik glanced at the coin in his hand when Bart finished. A stash of copper coins bearing the same markings as these were discovered years ago and sparked a massive surge in treasure hunting, Chad said. Kevik looked from one to the other, then finally settled on Riyan. "You guys are looking for the actual King's Horde." It was more a statement than a question. They didn't reply, but he saw the truth in their eyes. "And the trail led you here?" Riyan nodded. "Then the key you expect to find here?" he asked as he trailed off. "That's right," admitted Riyan. "It will hopefully open the Horde's hiding place." "Do you know where it is?" he asked. They grew silent. "We have an idea," Bart finally said. I mean, they don't know for sure that's where the King's Horde is, but I mean, everything kind of points to that direction, right? But they don't know for sure. So Bart didn't actually lie. It is an idea. And, yeah. "We have an idea," Bart finally said. "All right," Kevin nodded. "I'm in." "What do you mean you're in?" asked Chad. "I'm willing to help you in your search to find the key and open the Horde's lock," he clarified. "We never," Chad said, as began to argue. "Very well," Riyan said, cutting him off. "A magic user would be most useful in this endeavor, I'm sure. Besides," he said as he glanced at Bart and Chad, "he now knows about it." Chad looked like he was about to argue the point when Bart said, "Fair enough, an equal share." Then he turned to Kevik. "But you have to keep this secret. If word got out—" "I understand," he assured them. A moment of silence hung between them before Riyan cleared his throat. "Maybe we should continue searching for the key." Bart nodded and led them back to the main passage. They turned down to the right again and went a short ways before another passage branched off to their left. Ahead of them, they could see where the passage they were currently following, where the passage they currently followed. I'm trying to reduce my words and wases, if I can, and still make it sound good. So, ahead of them, I don't need the of them, but I'm going to leave it anyway. Ahead of them, they could see where the passage they currently followed turned sharply to the right. Continue on ahead, Ryan suggested. Bart nodded and passed by the passage on the left, then turned the corner to the right. After the turn, the passage went another 10 feet before ending at another passage running left and right. Left this time, piped up Chad. Since one way was as good as another, they turned to the left. The passage continued on for a ways before turning sharply to the left. A little farther, and they came to where a passage branched off to their left and extended past the light of the lantern. Ahead of them, the passage continued forward several more paces before turning to the right. Left again, said Chad. Why not? Agreed Ryan. Turning into the passage branching to the left, they followed it. The passage went straight for a ways, then turned to the right. After another short walk, it turned back to the left, went a little farther, then turned once more to the left. Shortly after that, the passage ended at another one moving left and right. Try right this time, suggested Ryan. Bart led them down to the right, and they came to a narrow passage that branched off to the left. Bart turned down the new passage. Then when it turned to the right, they saw a chest with an open pit before it. We've already been here, Bart said. This place is a maze, observed Ryan. How on earth are we ever going to find our way without getting lost? I don't know. Were you guys starting to get frustrated with all the left, right passages? And yeah, I did that intentionally. I have a map somewhere. I might be in storage back in Washington. I did draw this area out. So this made perfect sense when you're looking at the map. But I mean, you know, you're with the characters. They're confused. They're lost. They're frustrated. And so the reader should feel the same thing, right? But yeah, you know, in Dungeons and Dragons, when I used to run them through, I would make mazes like this. You know, labyrinths that they would have to figure their way through. And sometimes it, you know, if you don't have the map in front of you, it gets confusing. But while I was a player, I figured out a way to not get lost, and I show that here. So okay, and it'll be explained in a minute. They returned back to the main passage and thought about different strategies they could employ. Finally, Ryan came up with one they thought would work. They would use the copper coins found in the chest above to mark which way they've already gone. When they came to an intersection, they would put one coin in the passage through which they just arrived, through which they approached the intersection. They first approached the intersection, and 2 coins at the beginning of the passage through which they left the intersection. So it's like, okay, say you got a 4-way passage, right? You come to it first, you put a coin. That way, anytime you come back from any of these other passageways, if you see a coin, you know that's the original place you came. And then when you left, you put 2 coins on the floor of where you went. So if you come there a third time, you know, from one of the cross passages, then you know, okay, we came from that way and we went that way. And then so we came from this way, and the only way left is now this way. So when you come to it a third time, you put 3 coins in. That means that's the direction you entered that passage the third time. And so obviously the higher the number, the better, right? Because if you go 1 leads you back where you started, so that's not going to do you any good. 2 leads you to where you went to get to and finally get back to number 3, and it's going to be a little bit confusing. But to find your way out, every time you hit a passageway, you follow the 1 coin, and so Every time you hit a passageway, you follow the one coin, and it'll lead you straight back, right? That's the theory. So it's not so much. It does help in finding where you have yet to explore, but more importantly, it lets you get back out. You're not continuously moving around trying to find your way. Every time you go to an intersection, you turn into the corridor that has a single coin that will lead you back out, almost a direct route all the way out. Of course, if it's a large labyrinth, you need a lot of coins or something else. Stones, doesn't matter, anything. You can even put scratches on the ground, with the tip of a knife or something. Anything, but one leads you back there. And so the greater the number, the more times you've gone through the intersection. When I started doing that, man, it made labyrinths so much easier in dungeons. After a while, they stopped doing labyrinths because they weren't a problem for me anymore. All right. It took a few minutes to return upstairs. Okay. Okay. Okay, they took a few minutes to return upstairs and open the door behind which the chest lay. The area where Bart and Chad got stuck, and they found the chest, and inside was a wealth of copper coins, a few silver and gold. They took the silver and gold, but they didn't care about the copper so much. It would just weigh them down, so they just left them there. Now they're gonna collect them and use them. Riyan stood next to the door to make sure it did not close on them this time. Then the others filled their packs, including Riyan's, with copper coins. There were easily a couple hundred, and they put 50 in each pack. They didn't want to overload themselves. They could always come back for more if they needed to. Finished with filling their packs, they returned back to the kitchen and went down the stairs. This time, when they returned to the junction just outside the stairs, Riyan placed a single copper coin on the ground at the mouth of the passage with the stairs, indicating that they had come this way, and that was the way out. Then, when they started down the passage to the right, he placed 2 coins at its mouth to indicate this was where they had gone, where they continued. When they followed the passage back down to the branching leading to the chest and pit, he put 2 coins on the ground just within the passage, saying they'd been down there. They don't need to go down anymore. They continued to retrace their steps until they had gone over the exact same path as they had before. Okay, Bart said when they returned to the passage leading to the stairs. Now we can continue. This sure seems complicated, Kevin replied. It is, agreed Bart. But if this place is set up like a labyrinth, then this will help. The coin system, anyway. Bending over, he made an arrow of coins that pointed toward the stairs. Just in case, he said as he stood back up. That way, when they got to that intersection, they would know that they were right there at the stairs. There's still that one passage off that way, Riyan said as he pointed down the way they had gone the first time. That we have yet to explore. Okay, Bart said, and headed off down that way. I hit it with my key stick. I really may need to get a new laptop shortly. Starting at the junction with the arrow of coins, they continued down and turned right. Then a short ways farther, the passage ended at another running left and right. They saw 1 coin in the one they were exiting and 2 coins to their left. Turning left, they followed this passage to where it turned to the right, then continued forward until they came to another passage branching off to their left. Again, a single coin from the way they came. 2 coins in the passage to their left, so they continued forward into the passage that had no coins. Any passage with no coins was a passage yet to be explored. Thus, they entered uncharted territory. Riyan placed 3 coins on the ground in the new passage to continue marking the order in which they took the passages. The passage quickly turned right, then after a short ways turned again. A long passage, the longest single passage they had yet to come across, then a turn to the left. Another short passage before they again turned left, then another very long passage ending at a door. Ooh, a door. This must be it, Riyan said. He was about to move forward when Bart stopped him. Haven't you learned anything yet? Bart asked. Stand back and let me take a look. Riyan looked sheepish, but backed out of his way. Sheepish. I had to throw that in there since he's a shepherd. Riyan looked sheepish, but backed out of his way. He and the others remained 10 feet back from the door as Bart moved forward to examine it. If you guys haven't noticed, I'm drinking the good stuff today. Yep, I'm splurging. Gotta celebrate. I got 2 subscribers today, or yesterday. Bart stepped carefully as he approached the door and made it safely all the way to it. But before touching the handle, he gave it and the lock a once-over. Everything looked normal, so he grabbed the handle and tried to pull the door open, only to find it locked. Taking out his 2 picks, he set to work on the lock and felt it click open. Replacing the picks in the rolled leather, he put it back into his pack. Taking the handle, he pulled it open. Whoosh! Suddenly, the door slammed open and a violent flow of water poured out. It picked him and the others up and carried them down the passage. The water extinguished the lantern and they were plunged into darkness. A bobbing light appeared just as the water... instead of a bobbing light, I should put Kevic's bobbing light because people may not remember that Kevik has that bobbing light cantrip. Kevic's bobbing light appeared just as the water washed them into a vertical shaft. They plummeted downward. Riyan screamed as he knew his end had come. Then all of a sudden, something sticky grabbed hold of him and stopped his fall. He slammed into the side of the shaft, but his downward fall had his downward plummet. His downward plummet had halted. A moment later, the torrent of water subsided, then came to a halt. He was quick to realize that the sticky object happened to be Kevik's arm. He was encased in his own green goose spell and had Chad stuck to him as well. Hanging upside down, he was stuck to the side of the wall. Bart was nowhere to be seen. You okay? Riyan asked Chad. Yeah, he replied. You? A bit rattled, but I'll be okay. Riyan then glanced at Kevik and saw his eyes moving. Are you all right? A muffled reply came from the goo, and he took that as an affirmative. Bart! Riyan cried. He looked down the shaft but saw only darkness. Bart! What? Came the reply. Only it came from above, not below. Man, I thought you were a goner, Riyan yelled up at him. Me too, he said. I managed to catch the lip and somehow held on while the water poured over me. Almost lost my grip a couple times. Get us out of here, Chad hollered up to him. Hang on, he said. Then he heard him laugh to himself. I guess you guys are kind of stuck down there. More laughter came as he began lowering the rope. Okay, why is he laughing? And just the adrenaline from having survived that. So, Ralph watched the rope descend, and when it came within reach, he and Chad both grabbed hold of it. The only problem was, they were still stuck to the goo coating Kevik. Can you hold all 3 of us if the goo is gone? Riyan hollered. Maybe, Bart said, but there's no way I could pull you up. Someone would have to climb the rope to the top and give me a hand. Chad, Riyan said, how good are you at climbing a rope? About like you, he replied. Lousy. Yeah, neither one of them had ever climbed a rope before. It wasn't likely they'd be able to do it now. What are you guys doing down there? Bart hollered down to them. Bart hollered. What are you guys doing down there? Bart hollered. I took out down to them because he's already said down there, so I don't have to repeat myself. I'm really trying hard to get the repetitive redundancy out of my stories. When I first wrote this, man, I had a lot in there. But I thought it sounded cool at the time, you know. But you mature. Kind of like teenagers and middle-aged people, right? Teenagers, they know everything, and they think what they do is the coolest thing ever, and no one's ever thought of it before. Oh, yeah, my daughter, who's what, born in 98, so 26. Anyway, she continuously gives me dating advice for my girlfriend. You know, give her flowers, you know, say something positive every time you see her. And I'm like going, yeah, I know. I've dated women before. I know how it works. But they think you don't know anything. And it just amuses me more than anything else. Bless her heart. Ryan ignored him as a plan began to form. Okay. Yeah, instead of came to him, I'm going to say came as a plan began to form. Kevik, can you dispel the goo and then recast it real fast? He could see the magic user's head nod slightly. All right, he said to Chad, this is what we're going to do. Kevik, can you dispel the goo, then recast it fast? He saw the magic, instead of saying could see, I'm going to say saw. He saw the magic user's head nod slightly. Do I need to put magic user in there? No. But it is nice to reinforce in the reader different aspects of your characters. Like, you know, I'm not going to continuously say that Ryan's a shepherd, but Kevik being a magic user, he's still new, and I want to reinforce that. All right, he said to Chad, this is what we're going to do. Bart was waiting impatiently for them to do something, but the rope remained slack. Bart, he heard Ryan holler, when you feel tension on the rope, haul Chad up. You got it, he yelled back down. Bracing himself, he waited. Then all of a sudden, the rope jerked as Chad's weight pulled at it. Bart began hauling him up until he appeared at the lip of the pit. From there, Chad was able to use his free hand to help haul himself out while Bart continued to pull. Thanks, man, Chad said when he was fully back in the passage. You're welcome, Bart replied. He then went to the lip and looked over the edge. It looked as if Ryan, but I'm just going to take that out. Ryan and Kevik were now somewhat farther down the shaft than they had been before. Kevik dispelled the goo, Chad explained. Then he and Ryan fell past the end of the rope before recasting it again and sticking to the side of the shaft once more. Bart nodded. That was a good idea. Then to those still in the shaft, here comes the rope. He lowered the rope. If they had fallen much farther, the rope wouldn't have been long enough, but as it was, they had a foot to spare. You guys get this right, Bart hollered. We don't have any more slack. Don't worry, Ryan hollered back. You and Chad work on hauling us up when Kevik dispels the goo. He and Chad gripped the rope and braced themselves in the passage. Okay, Bart hollered. Then all of a sudden, the rope jerked in their hands and they almost lost their grip. Damn, cursed Chad as the weight of Ryan and Kevik pulled on the rope. Okay, together, as said Bart through clenched teeth. It took great effort to maintain his hold on the rope, and even more to begin hauling it upward. I'm going to do upward. Hand over hand, they slowly drew their friends out of the depths. When they reached about halfway up, Chad grunted, I'm not going to be able to continue. Yes, you are, asserted Bart. They're almost up. Chad gritted his teeth and through sheer force of will kept his protesting muscles moving as Ryan and Kevik drew ever closer to the top. Finally, the top of Ryan's head appeared at the top of the pit, and the bobbing orb of Kevik's appeared as it bobbed into view. Chad, said Bart with great effort, I'll hold them. You help them up. Chad let go of the rope with relief and moved to the edge of the pit while Bart held them all by himself. First Ryan, then Kevik came over the lip onto the passage. When the rope was free again, Bart let go and collapsed to the ground. Oh, my arms, he groaned. Are you okay, Ryan asked as he came close. Just give me a minute, he replied. I think we need to take a break. Ryan nodded. That might not be a bad idea. The four of them settled against the walls and broke out some rations. It was a bit damp from the dousing of water. Ryan discovered that his lantern must be at the bottom of the pit. Fortunately, Chad had a spare attached to his pack, and soon light once more filled the passage. It would seem we need to be a bit more cautious from here on out, Chad said. Where did this shaft come from anyway? Kevik asked, referring to referring to the hole they were just pulled out of. Yeah, where did the shaft come from? Kevik asked, referring to the hole they were just pulled out of. It wasn't there when we came through the first time. Just part of the trap, Bart explained. I've never even heard of one like this before, but apparently, when the door was opened, the trap door opened too. Then the water was to wash the intruder into the shaft, and that would be that. Riyan glanced at Kevik and grinned. You earned your place with us after such quick thinking, he said. How did you ever think to use a goose spell in such a way? He returned the grin and replied, my master said that as a magic user, we were at the mercy of the spells we knew. He insisted that I be versatile in applying them, always thinking of different ways in which they could be used. In this case, the picture of how the goblin stuck to the side of your horse back when we first met came to mind. Picture of how the goblin stuck to the side of Bart's horse, because it wasn't Riyan. Since he's talking to Riyan, I have to say it was Bart's horse. Back when we first met came to mind, and I acted. A good thing you did, too, Chad praised, or it would have been the end of all of us. Just did what I had to do, he said. Inside, he was beaming, though he tried not to show it. His master would have been proud. And that's in chapter 21. I love traps, but they gotta have a logical reason for me. When I was a teenager and I was making campaigns to run people through, I didn't care about logic. I just wanted fun things for them to work their way through, figure out, and solve. It made no difference if a regular door opened into a room in the bottom of the dungeon and a storm giant was in there, right? How did the storm giant get in there? How did it get through the doorway? How did it survive? What did it eat? I didn't care. Back then, I just didn't care, you know? But now those questions plague me, and they have to make sense. So I'll go in, I believe, I'm not 100% sure, I haven't read this in a very long time, but I'm pretty sure in the next chapter, they enter that water room before the water came out, and I think I kind of explained a little bit about it, but that's it. And so I like being creative, I like being clever, I really do. My girlfriend, I think it drives my girlfriend's crazy sometimes, because she thinks I try to be too clever. Well, you know us guys, we want to impress our ladies with our, what does Red Green say? The girls don't find you handsome, they should at least find you handy. Red Green show. Oh, love that show. If you haven't seen it, look it up on PBS if you can find it, or online. It's really cool. So that ends chapter 21. I don't think I rambled too much, but hey, 43 minutes, I guess I rambled quite a bit. Thank you for hanging with me. This was an exciting chapter, and I think they just keep getting exciting. And so we'll do chapter 22 tomorrow. Y'all take care. And again, if you haven't already, like this reading, like all my readings, because the more likes I get, the more views I get, the more they'll be shown to other people, and hopefully we can get this thing growing. And if it grows big enough, I still hope to get maybe someone interested in publishing it, or though I'm self-published, I'd be open to an editor or to an agent or a publisher, but we'll just see what happens. First things first, let's just have fun and read these. I'll talk to you tomorrow. You have a good day.